Okay, so I've had a couple of days to sit down and really think about everything we've been told about Sonic Frontiers up till this point, right? And you might remember that video I put up a bit ago where I said I was worried about the game to the point that I actually felt it needed to be delayed or further polished. But you'll be happy to know that for the most part, my viewpoint has turned around. I say for the most part because I still have my small share of concerns, honestly, but those are easily overshadowed by the amount of optimism I now have for the game. That said, you might be curious as to what has caused this change in my opinion, and well, in this video, I'll do my best to explain why. Now, we've been shown a lot of footage for the game by now. We've also been given a truckload of articles where people gave their hands-on impressions about it, and of course interviews with members of Sonic Team. But I'm not going to go over literally everything that we've learned in this video because otherwise it'll be too long and it will likely overwhelm you. So instead we'll take it one video at a time. In this case, we'll start with a new block of gameplay footage that popped up over at the SEGABits YouTube channel earlier this week. This sound fair to you? But don't you worry, Sonic Origins, we have not forgotten about you. I'm actually really looking forward to live streaming that game when it drops next week. I gotta pre-order my Xbox Series S and I am so ready for it. What about you guys? Does streaming it sound like a fun idea? Let me know in the comments down below. But for now, back to Sonic Frontiers. When the first handful of Frontiers videos popped up at IGN, it felt like I was an artist looking at a blank canvas and somebody had yet to take a brush to it. That's a pretty elaborate way of saying that what I saw felt empty, without purpose, without detail, and well, you get the idea. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to take away from what I saw. We've already talked about this in my video about Sega's marketing strategy of Frontiers, but their showcase of it has felt largely restrained. Like, apparently they have a demo build for the game over at Summer Game Fest, and they're still not willing to show us the entirety of its contents. I do think it relates to my theory about them being understaffed with their marketing team, and that's why they've had to go with this approach, or I honestly don't know. We're not going to delve too much into that. But fast forward to now, and they've since dropped us another bit of gameplay footage that, to be honest, doesn't really showcase anything new. Like, they'd already given us demonstrations of the game's exploration aspect, the combat system, and the puzzles scattered throughout the Starfall Island, and their next bit of footage doesn't deviate from any of that. However, watching that, I felt like that showcase had a lot more substance than what we'd first seen. The video kicks off with Sonic traveling through the islands in a sheet of rainfall. We already knew a day-night cycle would be a thing, but weather patterns too? Oh boy. And I was already impressed with the attention to detail in this game as it is. This just gets even better. Makes me curious as to what they're going to do with the desert region that was briefly mentioned in the game's homepage when it first went up around the time of its reveal at the Game Awards. But anyway, Sonic is propelled directly towards an encounter with a unique enemy design that has spawned a lot of Twitter memes. Be careful when scrolling through there, you wouldn't believe the things people are saying about this enemy design. Like what? But yeah, anyway. The battle kicks off, and it quickly becomes apparent that you can no longer adopt the simplistic approach of just throwing out homing attacks and having it be the end of that. To be fair though, IGN's combat showcase exhibited a similar level of detail, but at first it felt, I don't know. Like, it felt they were taking a slower approach to it at first, like they were a lot more evasive than they were offensive, but eventually they figured things out and things became interesting. And it's no different here, only this time the evasive maneuvers are mixed in with Sonic's offense, making it so he can do a basic hit and run approach of sorts so that he can mount his offense without getting hit himself. For example, he starts off by trying to punch his enemy into submission, only to get knocked away eventually. So you can't just be all button mashy like you probably can in other games. And that further adds to the depth of this game's combat system. You actually have to make a calculated approach to each of these battles, and that is pretty sick in my opinion. There's also one other encounter that they go on to show us, and it features a cylindrical machine with a saw blade surrounding its midsection. Obviously, you have to avoid the saw blade while whittling away at its body and taking care not to get hit by any of the projectiles that it throws out at you. It'll also occasionally levitate into the sky and then slam onto the ground with the intention of flattening you. Once you've beaten either of these enemies, they release portal gears, which, according to IGN, are used to unlock boss battles, and when those are completed, they in turn lead to bite-sized linear Sonic levels where you will find the Chaos Emerald. And yes, I have a ton to say about those bite-sized linear levels in another video, but suffice it to say, it points back towards a league that talked about generation-style cyberspace levels. Oh boy. It's also here that we get our first glimpse of the parry mechanic that IGN had mentioned before. You can evade attacks if you choose, but if you time it right just as they're about to hit you, you can parry them instead by pressing both of the shoulder buttons, I think it was. The effects may vary depending on the situation, but for example, we see this Beyblade looking guy right here spinning towards Sonic, and just as he's about to hit him, Sonic is like, please, and smacks him away! I don't know why, but there is something about this sequence that was just so BA. I'm already loving this combat system just for this animation. The footage cuts back to a familiar location, the very same tower you'd glimpsed in the game's first trailer and its first showcase. Only this time, Sonic is exploring it during the sunset, and the player is scaling it much quicker than what was seen in the first showcase, in part because they are making adequate use of Sonic's boost mechanic, which makes its return here in Sonic Frontiers. I can't say I'm a fan of this. They've had the boost mechanic since 2005 Sonic Rush, or 2003 Sonic Heroes if you count the boost being briefly featured in its special stages, but personally I don't count that. It's been like 17 years, so you would think SEGA would explore new options for Sonic's movement, and to be fair, they kinda have, but I meant something other than including the boost mechanic, which appears to have become a mainstay for Sonic, much like his homing attack, for example. I can't say I'm a fan of this, but I'm not gonna moan too much about it, don't worry. When Sonic gets to the top of this tower right here, he gets a breathtaking view over the rest of the island, which I guess is appropriate because this game draws a lot of parallels to Zelda Breath of the Wild already. Yeah, sorry, I'll stop with that. And Sonic appears to be crouched over as if to watch his footing. Did I mention that this game has a stunning amount of attention to detail already? There's another animation I briefly noticed after Sonic fought the first enemy in the showcase video. After he won, he was briefly hunched over as if he was exhausted. This is likely to indicate the fact that the player either has no rings or is running dangerously low on them, and this animation is meant to send a warning signal to the player. I'll freely admit, when it came to Sonic's in-game appearance, I didn't like that they carried over the Force's render into Sonic Frontiers, but they appear to have given it quite a facelift, so I actually think it's going to look really good in this game now. Like, heck, have you seen how the lighting interacts with his model? Like, look at that! This is definitely going to be a game that draws upon the capabilities of the latest generation of consoles, and oh my god, I cannot imagine how mind-blowing it's going to look on PC with the best possible graphics. Like, can it possibly look any better than this? I'm a little scared to find out. This gives me hope that the battle animations we've seen in the IGN showcase will look so much better when the game comes out, because I didn't get the impression that they were finished the first time around. And apparently they weren't, because they did say that was an early build, which makes sense. However, early build can mean one of two different things in my opinion. They could simply be calling it an early build because the game isn't out yet, or this could actually be a much earlier build than the game's actual up-to-date build, its most current build. And for IGN, SEGA gave them a much older build for whatever reason, whereas the gameplay we see on the SEGABits YouTube channel looks a lot more up-to-date. At least, I get the impression that that's the case. Oh, before I forget to talk about this, because it almost flew right by me. You know how it was said that there would be a disembodied voice guiding Sonic through the Starfall Islands? At first I thought that would be Amy because of the Frontiers trailer. But right here, after Sonic beats the second boss enemy in this video, you hear the disembodied voice, but it does not sound anything like Amy. The voice is definitely female, but it doesn't sound anything like Amy. My theory is that this might be somebody related to an ancient tribe that once inhabited the Starfall Islands, potentially the same tribe, responsible for these futuristic, independent designs that would later be called the Titans. This brings to mind a ghost girl that was supposedly hinted towards in, I think it was one of the Tales Tube episodes at the official Sonic YouTube channel, that or something else? Feel free to correct me. You know those heart-shaped collectibles we've been seeing throughout the islands? These are apparently skill pieces, and when you collect enough of those, you're going to get a skill point, which can then be used to upgrade any of Sonic's capabilities, whether they relate to his ring capacity, which of course is his take on a health gauge, his attack power, his defense power, and his speed. And I think these allow him to unlock other abilities, like the Psy Loop, which is the official name of a spin cycle move that had been referenced in previous leaks. And about the concept of leveling up Sonic, it brings to mind a level up system that was seen in Sonic Heroes, and then given greater detail in Sonic Unleashed. I can also presume that a similar mechanic was featured in Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood because it is regularly described as a game with RPG elements, so I can only assume it had a level up system of its own too. It makes a return Sonic Frontiers, only this time it appears to be governed by a system of collectibles rather than an experience bar of sorts, unless that plays a role too. There's also other collectibles to be unlocked by finishing puzzles that you'll find all over the islands, many of which are rumored to be optional, but I would figure that some will be essential for completing the main campaign, or the story mode you want to call it that. These puzzles I figure would be super simplistic, but apparently that won't be the case for all of them. Some will actually have a fair bit of a challenge to them. Like for example, performing a homing attack on these floating steps and then using them to get to the very top. This will require some timing and some decision making. I like what they're doing with these puzzles. It hasn't been said what these collectibles are for, however, but they don't appear to resemble the skill pieces that we've seen elsewhere. Unless these actually are the skill pieces, or maybe they relate to other things. Good lord, there's a lot about this game that we don't know still. Come on! As the player continues exploring the Starfall Islands, I get less and less of an impression that this will be a slower paced game. That was initially what I thought on seeing the first wave of footage, and I had my considerable share of gripes about it. How are you going to take Sonic, who has a reputation for being a speedy platformer, and drop him right into an open world setting without letting him live up to his reputation as a speedy platformer? But then again, it helps that we now know there is a level up system in effect, and you can level up Sonic's speed. So by this, I hope they're referring both to his default movement speed, or when he's moving without boosting, and when he's moving while he is boosting. If you can level up both of those things, then it makes me feel so much better about the pace of the game. And as far as the open world aspect goes, this is definitely reminiscent of how you would play a modern 3D Sonic game. With all the rails scattered out and about, the floating platforms and all the springs, definitely gives you that 3D modern Sonic feel. And they've also brought back the freestyle mechanic from Sonic Generations. I'm guessing this is to build back his boost gauge when it's exhausted, or they may have repurposed it for something else. It is cool to see it back though. I have to wonder what happened here though. The player ran right off the side of his platform and then teleported right to the ground within the next split second. Did they do a super fast wall run, or was there a bit of teleporting going on there, or am I just blind? As far as the open world aspect goes, I feel that was much better demonstrated here than before. The player has a deliberate approach to the showcase, and from what they've shown us, the islands don't look nearly as barren anymore, in fact not even close. And that is part of what heavily encouraged me to change my outlook on this game for the better. Like, it may not look all that different to you if you're drawing comparisons between the two pieces of footage. They do have some similarities, I'll admit, but there's just a lot more flavor to the showcase that I couldn't help noticing, and if you're like me, you might have caught on to that also. And another concern I had was the potential overuse of springs, rails, and boost paths to aid with Sonic's exploration, but I wasn't objecting to their use completely. I just didn't want them to get overused, if that made any sense. I still want the islands to be at Sonic's mercy. Like, he can do whatever it is he wants with them at his whim, the more that he levels up and unlocks his capabilities. That's part of what I was hoping for. I wasn't saying springs should be excluded, we should not have any rails or anything like that. That's just silly. And in fact, those elements tend to be typically indicative of a Sonic game, so omitting them just would not have made any sense. I just didn't want them to be used too much, if that makes any sense. Like, I didn't want them to be used to the point that Sonic's capabilities don't feel as relevant anymore. And luckily, this showcase strikes that sweet balance here, and I'm really happy about this. And then finally, they show that same puzzle where you have to create the side loop around these 3 blue torches right here. And apparently you can create a side loop around more than one torch rather than just doing it one at a time like what was done before. So there's a bit more freedom to what the side loop will allow for, and in fact it's regularly used as a combat tool in the showcase to lower the enemy's defenses. Kind of like the blue tornado in the Sonic Heroes, but significantly more advanced. I may have said this already, but this is a tool that I'm especially intrigued to explore further. I think it'll be pretty fun. And then the showcase ends right there. And that wraps it up for this evaluation of the latest gameplay footage for Sonic Frontiers. To summarize, this demonstration was a lot more flavorful and informative than what we've been seeing before. If Sega had just started with this showcase instead of saving it for later, I don't think people would have been nearly as mixed in their reception to Sonic Frontiers as they were before. And some probably are mixed still, but in my case, I've gone from being concerned to being genuinely excited. And I can't wait to see what else they'll show for us. This footage doesn't answer literally every question that we have on our list for Frontiers, I'm sure, though some of these questions would be addressed in a hands-on impression that have been shared since Summer Game Fest, and rest assured I will get around to reading through those, as I have read through them, but I want to read them again to make sure I've got my thoughts in order, and then I will share them here. Until then, that'll do it for now, guys. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed what you saw, drop those likes and comments down below, and consider subbing and ringing that bell to stay up to date on my content. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Until then, peace out. Blue Blurs for life, and take care.